with Trae. Come on, it's the day with Trae.
Pump it up, pump it up.
Trae.
Come on, come on.
With Trae.
Pump it up, pump it up.
It's the day with Trae.
This is the day to gain inspiration, to make a positive change in the nation. We're inviting you to partake in conversation, to raise your vibration. It's the day that we will all celebrate all of our peeps that make this thing elevate. Watch the negative fade away, cause it's the day with Trae.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Day with Trae. I'm your guest host, Deuante Damper, stepping in for my girl, Trae Holiday. Now before we begin, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Converge Media. You can learn more about We Live in Color, Back to Basics, and more. Go to whereweconverge.com to know why Black media matters. Now, today is an important day for the media studio as well as myself, because I think that when we talk about public safety in our community, there are so many different pockets of folks that work in it, and there's a narrative about how it's being worked. But I want to talk about the programs and how they're working for all of us. So we have some amazing guests. One of them is a community expert, Michael Dixon, who has a history. And I don't think that I would even be standing here in the areas of public safety without his leadership. We will be talking today about how we're navigating our students and what ways, what tools have we used before that have worked for community. But my first guest, I'm very happy to be here from Purpose Dignity Action, co-executive director, Lisa Daugaard.
Hi, Deuante. Great to be here.
I'm happy,
Huge fan.
A huge fan as well.
Of the show, of Converge, of you.
Yes. And I'm happy to have you here because, I mean, Lisa, when we talk about public safety, there is so much of your work that has been embedded in that, from WELD even to Purpose Dignity Action, formerly known as Public Defenders Association. So I think we could just start off there. Why the name change?
Yeah, well, so PDA goes back to 1969 when we were a public defense, indigent defense legal firm that was founded to represent Central District activists who were fighting for race equity, fighting for economic opportunity, doing a lot of direct action, finding themselves charged with crimes in Seattle Municipal Court without lawyers. So that's what the organization came from. And then it became a public defense nonprofit for almost 50 years. But in 2013, King County took over public defense. They just, for reasons that were really economic, the public defenders sued to get access to state pensions, and the Supreme Court found that they were qualified. King County was like, well, if we're gonna pay you like employees, you're gonna be employees. So took over public defense. Some of us had been working within the public defense world for years on ways in which the legal system it creates racial disproportionality and itself is deeply characterized by racial disproportionality and discrimination. And we're sort of at a fork in the road. Should we go and be government employees, or should we remain independent to work on these structural issues? And so we remained independent and ultimately changed the name to Purpose Dignity Action, because we're no longer public defenders.
Why Purpose Dignity Action?
Well, there was a 2-year conversation with our staff and partners that you were a part of to distill, what are the values that we are about and what makes this organization somewhat unique. And the concept that we are, first of all, we have a positive vision. We're not just about what is wrong and what needs to be changed, but what is the vision of what we should have instead? And so that concept of dignity, that people who are being harmed by current systems are deprived of the ability to live in dignity, and that we are fighting for conditions that allow people to realize their value, their worth. Purpose, to be intentional and to be disciplined about the strategies that we are embarked on, and action, because we're not going to just talk about it. We're going to try to make things change.
Yes. And can you tell us what some of those changes have looked like?
Well, so PDA fundamentally is about designing and implementing community-based public safety strategies. So the largest effort that we're a part of is LEAD, the diversion program that creates a road away from jail and prosecution for people who do commit law violations, but they're related to poverty, how people are making a living, working in the illicit economy, selling drugs, selling sex, selling stolen property, and have behavioral health issues, so substance use issues, mental illness. Almost all the folks that we're talking about are survivors of complex trauma. So LEAD is a framework to recognize that those law violations are happening and say, it's problematic behavior, but we need to respond in a different way than prosecuting people. So we are the project managers for LEAD. That's like a 13-year-old effort, and it in turn is rooted in prior efforts with a number of community partners to move in that direction. So I want to credit many, authors and originators of that concept. And then in 2020, we made a number of further changes. Number one, we made sure that the resources that LEAD has could be available to people who are referred in, not by police, but by community partners. So creating community referrals into that long-term case management. Alongside, we still will take a referral from an officer because we absolutely want to be there to receive that diversion whenever it's possible. But we also noticed that people were, out in the streets to a degree, not that wasn't true before 2020, but starting with the pandemic, when shelters de-intensified and community centers closed and people were economically, either you had a paycheck before the pandemic, so you're getting unemployment, benefits extended, you're getting your paycheck protection loan, but there was a whole part of the world that was not in the formal economy and did not have access to that relief. And so people were living in really, really dire circumstances on the street, and we felt we needed to make sure that we could go get those folks. So we used COVID relief funding to create a new strategy for sheltering folks called Co-Lead.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to get into now. So
Co-Lead.
Co-Lead and all the work, shout out to all the folks that work in the Co-Lead space. How, when we're talking about public safety and we're talking about advocating for that safety, I would, if I had to put it in the dictionary, I would just not even write anything out. I would just put a picture of the staff of Co-Lead. Can you walk us through the work that our Co-Lead staff is doing?
Sure. So Co-Lead is taking in people directly from the streets who are living in really, like I said, really dire circumstances. And I think the first important piece of the strategy is that our staff fully see that. It's eyes wide open, right? People are coming in, almost everybody has severe substance use disorder. So people are actively using toxic, unregulated substances that are a risk to their own survival, people at high overdose risk. People are also usually making a living in ways that have, has an element of danger to it, unregulated, illicit economic activity. So there's debt, there's violence associated with that. And so people are coming inside, but not, they're bringing a lot of that with them. So we've needed to have a safety team on site 24/7 that's capable of de-escalating and resolving dynamics that arise from those economic circumstances that people have been in. And then we have 24/7 intensive case management. So when folks come in, they're being meet you where you're at, but not leaving people there. So people begin work at their own pace and toward their own goals, but on a recovery journey from pretty much day one, coming inside and being in a safe and supported place.
Yeah, in the areas I think are extremely important. Like I think about, we have so many folks that are impacted downtown or impacted in the Seattle area. What are some of the locations or areas that we are in?
Taking people from? Yeah, we try to track where are the sort of concentrated impacts that if we and other organizations doing similar work, if we don't come, right, and respond, there's going to be another response. So we're essentially tracking the pressure for enforcement, and we're trying to go and respond as an alternative in order to make a viable choice, really, for city leaders to, move in this direction rather than pushing people into courts and jails and coercive, sort of a coercive environment. So right now that means we concentrate on downtown Seattle. There is a strong and steady referral network from Rainier Beach in Southeast Seattle into Lead. There is a concentrated focus in Little Saigon and the Chinatown International District. There is about to be a concentrated focus in Aurora, the general vicinity. So again, we're sort of tracking hotspots and trying to get there first.
Well, that's really interesting that you bring that up, because those very spots, right, are a part of a new law that they're trying to put out here in the community, which is SOTA. Can you elaborate on what that is? And
yes, there's a proposal to go back to something that came out of the 90s, kind of at the high water mark of mass incarceration. And I knew it well from when I was a public defender. There were hundreds and hundreds of my clients were charged with violating these SOTA orders. SOTA stands for Stay Out of Drug Areas, and then there's a version of that, SOAP, which is Stay Out of Areas of Prostitution. And the concept is that judges order people who are accused of behavior that is related to drugs or related to the sex trade to just not be in areas where that activity is concentrated, which in theory sounds like low impact. You can help yourself by just staying away. But in practice, people don't stay away because that's where they earn their income. And they don't have an immediate alternative, which is what we should be investing in, right? Like make it possible for people to not be there. So people would go, and then they just face further prosecution. And like 15 years ago, a pair of University of Washington researchers studied this, interviewed people who were subject to these orders, and found that it didn't change their behavior. They still went back, but they were just subject to further penalties and were pushed further away from services and engagement. So we've made this mistake before as a community, and you can just tell that public officials and neighborhood leaders are so fed up, and rightly fed up. We need a plan. They're not wrong about that. We don't need this plan because this plan goes nowhere, and we already know that. So we're pushing to try another way.
Yeah, and I think like investing in some of the programs that are out here are a key part of that. And what are some of the things that we could be, because you said out there in Aurora, and I think about our community members out there and how much more resources we need in that space. What does it look like activating in those areas?
I think there's two elements. This theme of activation, which I know you've been working on with lots of guests, is super important. It's probably the top. If there were one word that summarizes what we should be doing instead of punishment and coercion, I would say it's activation. And so there's two levels, right? One is mobilizing resources that match the needs at a deep level of people who are making a living in difficult circumstances, so that they have alternatives. That is long work, and there are a lot of organizations that have those cultural and relationship-based connections that are great at it, but they don't have the resources that they need. So first, just go ask them, what do you need to make more progress with people and see more profound individual change? There's also a place-based activation strategy that you can bring to bear. KUOW did a story about Aurora, below and above the shoreline Seattle jurisdictional line, and they were exploring the theory that the reason things are better in shoreline is because there's more enforcement. But actually, police and city leaders in shoreline were like, it's not really that. It's about activation of the space through architecture, through lighting, through landscaping, and putting other uses in that space. So we have seen the same thing work in Seattle with the activation of Occidental Park, Westlake Park, Pioneer Park, and most recently City Hall Park. And it's really not about telling people they are not welcome or they are not wanted. It's making the space welcoming to other people so that it is a shared space and it's more of a resourced space. So that's the road, I think, for the spaces that can be faster than some people's recovery journey takes years, and obviously we're not going to wait that long to do something about disorder. In the meantime, we can activate space in a way that doesn't harm anyone.
Absolutely. And there's so much more to ask, but even at the same time, I do want people to be able to get involved. How can community folks get involved with PDA and the work that they're doing?
I mean, I think depending on where you sit, getting involved with vocal, free pitch. Getting involved in vocal is a fabulous door for ground level activism and engagement. But from a policy advocacy point of view, the really important thing right now is to number one, validate that street level disorder is a problem. It's not only a problem for businesses, it's not only a problem for the neighborhood, it's a problem for the individuals who are left in these dire circumstances. But number two, run down the list of effective existing responses and ask that they be scaled to have deeper interventions be possible, but also for more people. We don't need to reinvent anything. There's already folks who have been doing the work, for years and decades. They need to be holding more cards. And so it's really let's call for deepening what we've got and strengthening those organizations.
That's real. So before we get out of here, I just need you for people to want to know more about PDA and what you do, if you could look in this camera and just let people know where they can find you.
So we can be found at We can be found, following directions is always hard for me, at wearepda.org. And on that website, there's a Get Involved button, and you can sign up for our information and newsletters. And there are a number of other contact emails, depending on which program you're interested in knowing more about.
And thank you so much,
Thank
Lisa,
you,
for
Deuante.
all that you do. It's not just what you've done in PDA. It is a history of creating public safety spaces and also putting community folks at the forefront of the conversation of the most impacted. I am honored to not just have you here as a guest here, but to be working alongside of you. I called you one day, and it just started like this community conversation around the fentanyl crisis, and it has really changed some lives. So I thank you.
Thank
and
you,
I'm honored
Deuante.
to call you friend and colleague. So,
I feel the same.
yes. And for everyone else, we will be right back with the amazing Michael Dixon. You're watching The Day with Trae.
You on my mind a lot. Don't need no time watch. I don't know how I got you in my pocket spot. Yeah, that's babe, need you every day. You seem like the barging down. Got my heart no barging in. From the bed to the floor to the couch. Might wake the neighbors up. Break you in and break you out. In the end, we gon' make a child. Then we gon' hit the show. Part 2, we don't need no pause. You miss me, we gon' get tipsy. Don't need a power shot.
Copy my steel. Face the fact that. Copy my steel. Face the fact that.
Here on Back to Vesa, it's always been important to me that we uplift stories from across the region, and that no matter where you live in the nation, you never have to miss a moment of the show as we continue to highlight the beauty, excellence, and resilience of our communities across the Pacific Northwest. Why? Because representation matters. So no matter where you live, be it the Central District or Centralia, Portland or Pullman, or anywhere across the country, I encourage you to join me on this Back to Vesa journey by downloading the free Fox Local app on your phone or smart TV as we continue to elevate the very best in our communities.
Welcome back to The Day with Trae. I am your guest host, Deuante Damper. And we have to continue this discussion about public safety, how the programs work. But in order to go forward, we have to also go back to know how we can move forward. Sankofa, I believe that is. But I want to just open up the space for public safety community expert, Michael Dixon. How you doing, brother?
Just fine. I'm just a student.
You just student.
Learning.
You're just a student, but you've really paved the way. Like when I'm saying that, it's a lot of the community folks that are so focused on like public safety, and the narrative is sometimes it could look at one lens, but you have a history of engaging community folks and being a part of the solution as well as you.
Yeah.
So I want community to know a little bit more about that history with yourself. So can you tell us a little bit? You were you were part of the founding group of the Black Student Union. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Me and my brother.
Okay.
And 4 others.
Okay. And what was that experience like at that time?
Oh, it was, I didn't know what to expect, actually. Everything was new. And the question was, were you willing to jump in? And I was one of the people that jumped in, and we just went from there. I mean, it wasn't any grand plan, it was a necessary plan. Lots of times, history is made because of conditions, and you're faced with either addressing the conditions or backing away. I was raised in my family to address.
Yeah. And you know, even where we're at now, I mean, where you were then, and then you started doing security for the schools.
Later.
And you know, we have so much, one of the main reasons why it was important for me to have you on the show is because there's so many people that are talking about public safety for our youth right now.
Yes.
Especially with the shooting of Amar Murphy Payne a couple of months ago, and even to now.
And he's the grandson of somebody I went to Garfield with.
See?
So I take it very personal.
Yes, sir.
And I want you to know that I'm going to pursue that, because we can't go forward if we let things like that happen to students and they get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody should get away with anything that harms another person.
Yeah.
I don't care who they are.
Absolutely.
And you know, they have to be held accountable. That doesn't mean they get treated inhumanely, but we all have to be held accountable for what we do, including myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that hopefully that will prevent
right.
bad things from happening.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, a lot of, as communities have gathered forward trying to figure out different ways of solutions, you've been doing a lot of that work with public safety. You were previously a security guard at Garfield. What did public safety look like to you during the times where you were doing that work?
Well, when I entered Garfield, I was coming out of the North End for a couple years.
Yes, sir.
And I was placed at Garfield in a situation where basically the students had no sense of security. Things were pretty wild, lots of fights. There was no sense of community, lots of chaos. So I and a few other people, I proposed it to the principal, is that, you know, let me start making some solutions so kids didn't feel so isolated and alone, because that's how these weapons start coming, because people are scared. And you have to make people feel secure.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that you were saying before we were on break, and it just made me feel uplifted, because some of the things that we've done, the community has done throughout the space, is like, y'all would go knocking on neighbors' doors, trying to making sure that they were engaged in what public safety looked like for those students. So I think.
Well, yes, you know, one thing based on my previous work being a Black Panther, is learning the importance of learning your community, knowing the people, not just the people, but the people that live there.
Yeah.
That, you know, door to door. That's what I did, and until I covered completely around Garfield and into the blocks, so I could get a sense of what the people were looking for, how the students were fluctuating in these environments, and proceeding to communityize everybody. So if something was going down somewhere or something looking suspicious, I'd get a phone call.
Yeah, and you figure out how to maneuver with the community on what
Yeah,
that would look
because
like.
people realized that they weren't alone anymore.
Yes, sir.
Businesses realized, like all the businesses that are along 23rd, say from Cherry to Jackson, I went to every single one.
Wow.
And made sure that we were all connected. So when I had kids that would go into the neighborhood and act outside themselves ignorantly, I was able to address them right away and get them to change their ways. I wouldn't kick them out. I said, well, now that you're here, this is how you're gonna act.
Yeah, and I love that, and then now where we're at, right? You are currently, where we're at now, there are community folks that are still looking for questions, and you've been engaging with some youth lately.
Yes.
And how has that process been?
Well, what I found is that this process reoccurs. It was the same situation when I was 17. I had 2 guns pulled on me and stuck in my head at Garfield in the building when I was 17. When I was a junior, we took over Garfield and insisted on having a black principal and black coaches and things like that. And we got it. And we didn't do it with violence. We were just a matter of fact. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And the response, most importantly, this is what I'm trying to get at, is the powers that be always try to brush off what we're seeing. The things that we were saying when we took over Garfield, had they been listened to, we wouldn't have an underclass of black students. But then, as being attempted now, you have powers that be, all of them, are trying to brush aside and minimalize the impact of what the students are saying.
Yeah. What do you hear them saying? What are some of the things that you hear them saying?
Well, what I get from the students is they come into a room of adults that try to intimidate them into thinking the way they think. And the fact of the matter is, these students, who I find to be highly intelligent, highly organized and sophisticated, they need to be listened to. And more than that, we're at a time where our young people should be at the table
Yes.
for everything because they're that important. We can't solve this problem without their input. See, that's the first thing. I can't solve it. None of us are going to solve it. They're going to solve or help in the process of solving it. So that's why I'm working with these young people. I'm not interested in them thinking like I do. After talking with them, they already do. But it's from them. And it's important that, after we're gone, dead, whatever, that young people will be a part of their process of development.
I love that.
That's the most important thing I'm interested in. I'm not interested in anything else but establishing a framework for when these crises come up, wherever they come up, that young people are involved in that process and not brushed aside. Because we as adults have not solved this problem. It's as bad as it's ever been, when you can go on a campus and shoot and kill somebody and not even get caught. That's unbelievable to me.
Yes, sir.
So I just happened, by chance find out that this boy that got killed was the grandson of somebody I went to Garfield with.
Yeah.
A good man, good family. And the boy was good. Now, the perpetrator of that crime needs to be found.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that we need to just, within this space, is just continue to find the solutions, and a part of that is justice for that family. And
Justice for everyone. See, there's a whole population of young people, lots of them are girls, who quietly and silently get abused. And that should not be going on. It needs to be stopped. But see, everybody has to have a piece in this. Everybody. And, I learned through organizing the students at Garfield is the fights, the disagreements, the weapons, all of that went down as we took care of each kid's needs, even if it was by a group. And then, most importantly, expanding their universe in thinking. Like we did this thing called the Holocaust Remembrance Committee. And what we were trying to do is teach people that all people are humans and that all people are affected by Holocaust. All colors, all races. So I had these students do the investigative work themselves and then present it. And what happened was the student body at Garfield's consciousness went up and the violence went down.
Yeah.
And this actually happened at Garfield.
See, and I really appreciate it. I wish I had more time. But if you could, do me a favor, because community will be still back, standing behind you in some of your efforts and listening to these kids. If we can just give a call to action to the camera right here, just let community know where they can find you and what do we need to do?
Okay, well, first of all, I am not a part of an organization yet, but I do see the need, and I'm kind of reluctant, but I do now see that I'm gonna have to get, a little bit.
Right there.
Sorry.
It's okay.
More formalized because there's a lot of need out there. So my first thing would be to, you can contact me through my colleagues. I work with the Rainier Beach community, and I'm working with these students. I could give you a phone number, but it's just a personal number, so I don't want to do that. But understand that, I'm kind of in my infancy as far as becoming an advocate for these students in terms of organization, so I guess you could reach me through certain people at Rainier Beach and Garfield, because I don't have a card.
Yeah, right. And you know what you don't need, Mr. Dixon? You don't need no card. They want to get a hold of you.
They can.
We can do the old school way. You come, you find them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you'll be at the community discussions, the SPS community discussions that'll be happening. There'll be all of those things. But above all else, I think one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you come on in as a guest is because we have to honor who has paved the way for us to be about action and be able to move forward. And what you were doing back then was listening to the youth, and what we need to do today is do the same thing.
Yes, I agree. And I would like to leave it there. I'm in the process of working with a number of people to formulate this organization that's needed to represent these young people, because that's my main mission, is to make sure that we get this apparatus set up and running. So things like this that happen, that cause these crises, can be prevented and minimalized.
Yes.
And then dealt with, instead of, well, what do? We have to get out of that.
What we need to do is be activated.
Yes.
And I appreciate you for coming on.
Right.
Thank you very much. You're a blessing. And we will be back with the closing of The Day with Trae.
Seattle Opera presents the world premiere of Jubilee. Jubilee follows the historic Fisk Jubilee Singers' initial tours following the Civil War. While raising funds for the fledgling Fisk University, the group shared their music around the world, showcasing more than 40 African-American spirituals such as Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, Deep River, and Wade in the Water. Jubilee is not to be missed. October 12th through 26th at McCaw Hall. Details at seattleopera.org.
Africatown Plaza is our latest affordable housing development project. It's 126 units of affordable housing over community commercial space.
It's the first time in my career, and I've been doing this for 10 years, that I was able to design for people who look like me.
Africatown Plaza is a beacon of hope.
Africatown Plaza is a love letter to the community.
So we are at the close of the day. I really want to thank the guests that I had, Lisa Daugaard from PDA and Michael Dixon. I think that one of the things that we can take away from this episode is that, we have to continue to educate, protect, restore, and rebuild this community. And there are folks and organizations that are leading these efforts. So please get in contact with Michael Dixon. Please go to wearepda.com to find more information about what it looks like to restore and how you can be a part of this solution. Walk with love today, and I will see you tomorrow. It'll be a feel-good Friday. Have a good day.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.